Battleline Podcast, episode 82. I am Ian Scotto.
I am Tonto. the Tonto. Is it the Tonto or just Tonto?
That's up to you.
I'm Tonto. What's going on, everybody?
For the new listeners out there, as I always like to give a little introduction to what we do, the podcast has been going really well. If you look on Apple Podcasts, we have over 200 5-star reviews, or close to 200 5-star reviews at this point. And I really feel, I'm biased, but I think this is one of the best podcasts out there. And it's not necessarily because of us. It's because we interview some of the most inspiring and really heroic people like Ron Moeller, who we're going to get to on this episode.
I think, and even though people, they want to listen to all the politics, and I think they subliminally want to be angry a lot.
Oh yeah,
this show isn't. It's not. We want it, and we planned it that way. We didn't have a fantastic sense of direction, but one thing we did at the beginning, and we both talked about, is there's enough political bullshit out there. We don't need to be talking about that. We need to be talking about stories that are inspirational, not to just you guys, but to us as well. Because, we also go through dark times, and any inspirational story out there helps motivate us. So that's what this show is. And it's about faith. Even if you're an agnostic or an atheist, there's still faith out there in something, but it shows motivation and what other people have done in their lives to overcome adversity. And that's the route that we're going to continue to head on.
Absolutely. And, we still cover news in the special operations world. Yeah. We cover news if it's pertinent to what we do, which we will do in a minute. But before we get to that, we've been talking so much about Ned, and, I hear from them, and a lot of our listeners have become subscribers. They are regular subscribers to Ned because it has helped them with so many different things. I'm going to give you a little anecdote for myself. Just this past week, I did get my first shot of the Pfizer vaccine. They give you all the details of what side effects you might have, headaches or any of that. I, like most people, didn't have much of a side effect, but did have some soreness on Wednesday night when I got it. And I figured, rather than take a painkiller or anything like that, I have a great tool in my arsenal, as I always say, which is Ned. And the thing is, not only will it help alleviate that pain, you'll also get a great night's sleep. You get that, what a lot of people refer to as that REM sleep, but what I've learned from the great supplement guy, Victor Conti, is that it's actually not REM sleep. It's that delta sleep, is that really deep sleep that you're in. And when I take Ned, I do have dreams, and I do wake up refreshed, as long as you give yourself enough time before bed to take it and get in that relaxed state. I personally would say, if you take it before bed, if it's one of those things where you're tossing and turning at 3 a.m., probably not the best. But if you could take it and give yourself enough time to get a good night's sleep, you're going to get a great night's sleep and wake up refreshed. And it definitely helps with any of that anxiety, any of that sleeplessness, and a whole lot of other issues that people have. So all I could say, beyond what we usually say, if you haven't already tried it, just take that step, go on the site and try their full spectrum hemp along with all their other products, because you are going to become a believer. I feel so blessed that I really mean it. My two favorite supplement companies are sponsors of this show. And it's because there's so many supplement companies out there where everything is like, this supplement tastes like Skittles, and I don't really want that. If I want candy, I'll go have candy. I want the good stuff,
Yeah. And they, both these companies that we work with, I think what we look for, not just the product itself, especially the ones that are where we have our primary, and I call them primary sponsors, ones that sponsor the show at least monthly, if not weekly. It's those companies that have great integrity and great values within their organization. And you can tell by their products, but also when we talk to them via email or via cell phone, that integrity is part of their operation, is part of their ethos in their company, and it reflects on their products. So, Ned is awesome. I still, every day, the immunity blend, it makes me feel good. The CBD oil, the full spectrum, I am at a point now where it's into my system and I can feel it working, where I don't need to take it every day because I finally have leveled out. And that's where you wanted to be. I always wanted to be at a point with CBD oil or any natural drug, and I don't want to call it a drug. I think that's a negative term, but any natural therapy that eventually I don't need it every day because it's working, and I only need it at certain times. And that's how I've been with now that I've taken the CBD oil for dang near a year, close to. Hasn't been that long that they've been with
a little
us.
over a year.
Yeah. That now I'm at a point where I don't need it all the time, but when I do need it, a couple drops under my tongue, and I'm back to hey, being Tonto, the Tonto that was always there when I was deploying. That just long lines, just hey, I'm relaxed and having a great day. And then the body butter as well. Being a guy that works out a lot and being older now in my 50s, I'm in the AARP category now. I definitely need something that helps out with muscle soreness. And the body butter is by far the best thing out there. And I don't smell like icy hot all day. So guys, get with Ned, try them. Their products are top notch, and they have a fantastic customer service base over there, and their organization is based in integrity and values and honor. And that's something as a veteran I look for. So tremendous company.
So if you've been in the market for CBD, you've been on the fence. I mean, this is your calling. This is the best stuff out there. It is the purest stuff out there. Go to helloned.com/Battleline or enter the code Battleline at checkout for 15% off your first one-time order, or 20% off your first subscription order plus free shipping, which a lot of our listeners have now been doing. So that's HELLONED.com/Battleline to get 15% off your first one-time order, or 20% off your first subscription order plus free shipping. Thank you, Ned. Let's hit it.
From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm going to shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battleline Podcast.
The switch is on. Battleline Podcast. Very excited to have Ron Moeller on this episode, who has a insane resume. Just looking through all that he's done, the type of resume where if I didn't already know guys in the community who know Ron, I would say, is this a little embellished? But it's not. Ron is the real deal. Before we get to that, though, there was a major podcast that's been all over Twitter, and they actually were interested in coming on here. They emailed me. As you know, we have a lot lined up, but I did tell them I wanted to talk about that and give them proper credit. So basically, this was on the Line Podcast with Dan Taberski, which is an Apple-sponsored podcast that you could check out. And for the first time, for those who have followed the case of Chief Eddie Gallagher, and he is Chief Eddie Gallagher, he got that rank reinstated by President Trump. He admitted to the killing of an ISIS member that he was on trial for after the fact, which was during the trial. There was a Navy SEAL medic by the name of Corey Scott who said, no, Eddie didn't kill him. I did, but Eddie stabbed him twice. Eddie says, I did not stab him twice. But what he says during the podcast, I could play the clip right now.
Here's my take. You're not asking for it, but I'll give it to you anyway. After reading the trial and listening to the trial and seeing the evidence, I would have said not guilty too. But I still have a hard time believing the other narrative that they made it all up. Just straight up lied. And so every once in a while, I'm trying to find where's the loophole? Where's the grain of truth that could have become something larger that felt like a lie? And then Eddie Gallagher admits what he never admitted the last time we spoke. what he never admitted during the trial, and what he has never admitted publicly to, as far as I know, anyone.
The grain of truth in the whole thing is that ISIS fighter was killed by us, and that nobody at that time had a problem with it. We killed that guy. Our intention was to kill him. Everybody was on board. Not one person.
Your intention was to kill him.
It was to do medical scenarios on him until he died.
But as you hear, as Eddie puts it, he performed, in his words, medical scenarios until he died, which is pretty sadistic kind of when you hear about it, because this is not just, the way that Gallagher and his wife have said, oh, we don't cry over dead terrorists. This was not the shooting of a terrorist. This was kind of the torture of a terrorist until he died.
And I don't want to jump to conclusions of what he means by that. Now, I've gone through medical labs where, and I don't think they do it anymore, but we used to have something called goat lab. And it was something where we would get a goat and we would practice keeping it alive. And really that is the best way to practice live tissue training, where, with real bleeds and where you're going to deal with sliced limbs and open guts. And again, but for the goat, it wasn't a pleasant experience. Granted, they were all sedated normally, but for him, when he said that, or when that's where I reflected back to, I'm like, holy crap, what is this, a goat lab for a terrorist? Like, I got no love for terrorists either. Believe me, I don't. But there's a point where, as Americans, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We don't go and burn our prisoners on TV, put them in an orange jumpsuit, cut their heads off. We don't do medical trials on them until they die. That's just not what we do. That's not what, as having values within the military, that's not what we sign up for. And that's not what I want it to be either. I mean, if we're in a firefight and I need to shoot a terrorist and I need to kill him, I'm going to kill him. But I'm not going to sit there and drag it out just because I'm pissed off. And it's hard to not be pissed off. I'm not going to tell you. It's very hard, but that is why we are Americans. That's why we serve under the United States flag. That's why we do have a lot of respect and honor, and we have the values within the military, because we hold ourselves to a higher standard. We're expected to. And especially when you get in the special operations community, and that even to a higher standard than what the regular military is. So when he said that, it's disappointing. It really is disappointing. It's angering. I think I'm playing it down a little bit, but it makes the rest of us look bad, like we're all sadistic fucks. I'll put it simply, and we're not. I've had several stories where I've had a chance to hurt a terrorist. I actually wrote about one in the Ranger Way, where we had a Taliban prisoner and we were searching him. And this was right after Coast happened. I don't know if you know what happened to Coast. It was depicted in the movie where they got bin Laden. What was the movie with Jessica Chastain? Where they
Zero Dark 30?
Zero Dark 30.
Okay.
That incident in Coast was actually GRS. That was Blackwater GRS guys, Jeremy, Southside, where we had a terrorist, right? It's right at the beginning of the movie where the terrorist came in and we allowed him all the way onto the compound. I wasn't there. I was actually in Kabul at the time. But the terrorist, or the asset, the chief of base for the CIA, allowed him all the way on the compound, and he detonated a vest and killed 4 GRS guys. One GRS was also wounded, Doc Wyatt, and he killed the chief of base that was there, which made the hugely bad call. Didn't listen to GRS, who was telling her, don't do this. Well, anyway, go to Kandahar. I was down in Kandahar later after that event, and we had made adjustments. We had moved a building approximately 600 meters from the compound. So if we ever brought an asset in, we would search him out there. So of course we would still die, but the base would be okay. Well, went there with the Taliban. He was there. He was being an asshole. I had another mentor of mine who passed away. His name was Joseph Bixler X, and we had every reason to kick the living shit out of him because of how he was acting and how he was Taliban. And I remember just looking at him, looking in his eyes. And I remember I told X, dude, I know you want to beat the living shit out of him. Let's not get to that point yet. And I remember I grabbed my Bible. I had a little pocket Bible out of my pocket, and I showed it to him. I said, he wouldn't let us search him because we couldn't touch the Quran. We weren't worthy enough to touch his Quran, which was supposed to be up here. We didn't know if that was a Quran or not, or anything else on him. And I said, hey, we are believing the same God. I said, translate this. I had an interpreter. I said, tell him we believe in the same God and he's welcome to touch my Bible. And when I saw his eyes just go like this. And I said, is he going to allow us to search him now? If not, we're going to have to get physical with him. And he allowed us to search him. So that's what I'm saying. There are points where you can let your emotions for what happened. And believe me, we wanted to kill Taliban because we had just lost 4 GRS guys. 4 GRS guys just blew up just right before that. And you still have to, because we are special operations, because we are supposed to be tip of the spear, because we are Americans, because we are supposed to hold ourselves to a higher standard, you still have to control your emotions and not let them get the best of you. And then, of course, not brag about it, which is what it's. I wasn't there, but the tone I got, I don't know what tone you got, was more of like a braggart. And that
we also know that he, the one thing he was found guilty of all the charges was the posing with the picture. And, the posing with the picture is that's what that is. The podcast was very balanced, I'll say, in that it does go into who Eddie Gallagher was as a whole. And, it reveals that Eddie Gallagher was diagnosed with 18 TBIs. He did have 18 traumatic brain injuries, and this could factor into things. But from my perspective, you can't use that as an excuse, just the same way that I think sometimes people who are sympathetic to the military will use that as an excuse, just as people on the left you hear all the time. Someone commits some heinous act and they go, oh, well, he didn't have all these chances in life. He was raised by a single parent. Well, it doesn't matter. Which is why it's the same way. I'll say personally, from my perspective, I'm not in favor of all this hate crimes legislation because I don't think it really matters why you committed an act of violence against someone who was innocent. If you did it, it's illegal to assault someone, regardless of the reason. And, in New York City, they've been talking all about, this is unrelated, but I'm just giving you an example. They've been talking about this rise in hate crimes against Asian people, including things on the subway. Well, we know a guy who was assaulted on the subway, and it had, as far as we know, it had nothing to do with race. Our friend Dave Park was assaulted in that same way on the subway, and the way Dave said it, this guy just wanted to murk someone.
It's target of opportunity. Yeah, and that wasn't covered by the media. That wasn't covered by the news because it wasn't going to incite anybody. It was a white guy, veteran getting assaulted for we don't know what. And the punishment for that guy should be the same as someone who assaults someone for race. I don't think there should be a difference. Just like I don't think you could you could say, well, this guy should be let off because he had 18 TBIs. I understand that. I'm sympathetic to that. But it doesn't change the fact that you did something that was unlawful. And then not only you could have just left it at that, he was found innocent of all the other charges. He was reinstated his rank by President Trump. He could have walked off into the sunset, as you often say, and just gotten back to life as usual. But now he's going on a podcast and saying, well, actually, we did kill that guy and none of us had a problem. And we talked about that on the other show. It's like, hey, dude, you won. You really won. Now, just the best thing you can do now is go live your life and just disappear. Just fade away into the sunset and enjoy your life with your wife and your family. And here we are again. Look what I did. Look what I did. Look what I did. Look how I don't know if it's a badass thing or not. But it's not. It's not at all. It's reprehensible. And it makes us all within the community look like we're evil warmongers, hell bent on killing everything out there, no matter if it's a terrorist or not. We're imbalanced. And I'm telling you, that's not the case. I have witnessed, and even myself have held back more times where we could have used physical or lethal force against an enemy, where we held back because it wasn't the right thing to do at the time. And I gave you one example already where we were more than justified to beat the living shit out of this Taliban guy. And we didn't. We handled it the right way. But so I get the emotions. I do, because I felt those emotions. Oh, you sons of bitches, you just killed 4 of our guys and you're going to tell me that now I can't do anything to you? And you have to, okay, what are we? Well, I'm a Ranger. X was a SEAL, great SEAL. I believe he was Team 8. So don't think that all SEALs are like this either. I don't want to put SEALs in the category that he got, because it's not the case either. X was a tremendous SEAL. He was one of my mentors. Learned so much from him before he passed away. But again, it was being able to take a step back and be, okay, who are we? What's our job? Control the emotions. That's why we are supposed to be at the top of the spears because we're able to handle our emotions and let's get the job done. Not let's torture a Taliban, ISIS or Taliban or Al Qaeda or Fala Sahate or Ansar Sharia or any of that. Let's not torture. We're not going to torture them just because it makes us feel better because they killed our brothers. I get it, guys, but that's not us. That's not what we do on the field of battle. Yeah, we're rip the living shit out of them. We'll kill them when they're trying to kill us. That's what we do. But we have rules also with POWs, and we need to follow those rules and those standards. And we have the values. I wrote about the Army values in the Patriots Creed. Every branch of service has values of they may not be named the same, but it's the same sort of thing: integrity, honor, duty, personal courage, which is part of moral courage, which is something that they didn't exemplify with the Taliban prisoner, that we have to live by and we have to serve by. And if we're not able to do that, then, well, if you're not able to do that, then you don't belong in the special operations community. But if we're as a country aren't able to still hold ourselves to those standards, we need to fix it somehow. I don't have an answer how we can, but we definitely need to, because that's why we have the flag and the Stars and Stripes and why we stand. And it's not just to remember those that passed away. It's to remember how great this country is and how we do hold ourselves to higher standards, to respect others out there and respect even our own, and even have some respect towards our enemy. I respect our enemy. They're some tough sons of bitches. They use everything for their disposal to win. And I know they treat our prisoners differently than how, well, we like to think that, but obviously with Eddie Gallagher, it's not that way. But I know they do horrendous acts to their prisoners of war, and we've seen it on YouTube and stuff, but we don't do that. That's not what we do.
Yeah, and it doesn't excuse it, as I said earlier, but I do think, it does factor in. I don't think this is how Eddie Gallagher started. It's when you go on deployment after deployment after deployment after deployment, which he did. He's a guy who had a very long career. I know that it changes people.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I can't use that as an excuse. I won't say that as an excuse either, because when that Kandahar incident happened, I'd been deploying for 4 years at that point. Yeah, dang near 5 years, close to 5. So I did multiple deployments to Kabul, Kabul, Herat, Baghdad, Mosul. I've been in Kurdistan several times, Kirkuk. I'd seen a lot at that point. And again, that's still why if we're going to be that tip of the spear, we have to be able to handle those pressures, see those changes coming, and still be able to adjust fire in ourselves so we don't have those loose cannon moments, or we got to step away and take a break. And it's one or the other. And you say, well, Chris, you were a contractor. You can do that. He was in the military. He can't. Well, honestly, in the military, I think it's a little bit easier because you have all those assets available to you as far as psyche evals, as far as counseling. You do demobilizations when you come back from a deployment, and pre-mobilizations before you go out, which you're talking to a therapist or a psychologist or somebody, a counselor that's saying, yes, he's good to go, or no, he's not. Whereas a contractor, dude, and I've seen guys that you can lie about it all day. I'm good to go. I'm good. No, you're not. Well, who's going to bullshit? Who are you going to sell? Who's you going to ask and talk to that I'm not good to go? Because we don't get that. You just get your orders, you get on a plane, and you fly out. Yeah. So yeah, bro, I know there should be checks and balances, but they were already there. The checks and balances were there. The quality control, and it comes down also to yourself, man. And then your team has to say something, which I believe they did.
Several of them did. And then, his wife basically, this is her words. His wife went on radio shows, including people we know, like Andrew Wilkow. And she said these SEALs were millennial crybabies and they didn't want to go on deployments. And they were just mad that he ran them too hard. And I don't know if, I think it's kind of hard to believe that several guys come out just because they didn't like you and they're willing to ruin your life. Well, I don't think most people.
It's tough on that one too, because there is a change. I'm on the other side too. There is a change in the guys coming in. The guys before me were tougher than I was. It really is.
Guys like Ron Moeller.
No, that's it. But there's a saying in the military: it was always harder before.
Sure.
It was always harder yesterday. Well, it really is. The Korean Rangers, holy shit, they're a hell of a lot tougher than me. Those guys, Battle of Bastogne, 101st Airborne, the paratroopers, fuck yeah, they're tougher. The things they were able to handle. So, and I do believe because of politics and because of regulations and we have to up the numbers, so we have to lower the standards, you do get a maybe not physically, but sometimes physically, but also a mentally weaker individual that come in later. Now, I know guys are going, oh, fuck you, Tano, I'm still and you're still badasses. But you see where I'm going with this. It does get, every generation is a little bit weaker. We are not as strong as the greatest generation. The people that fought in World War II, just mentally, physically, and emotionally, how strong they were. I will say, first and foremost, I am not as strong as those guys inside. Those guys were hard as nails. But with Eddie saying that and his wife saying that as a reason too, it's, I can believe parts of it, but after more stuff comes out.
Yeah, there were multiple things. Stuff that didn't make it to trial.
Yeah, then I tend to say, well, maybe so, but that still didn't lead them to come out, because you're just admitted that you tortured a terrorist. Which
we have to get to Ron. If I could put a little ending on this, at least for me, I would say this as even, I guess you can call me a member of the media. I mean, what we do is not mainstream media, but if you have something that you did that's even questionable, don't talk to media. Not just him. I mean, there was also that guy, Matt Goldstein. He went on Fox News and he said he did something that was illegal.
We talked about it.
He could have gotten away with it, and I'm not saying get away, talk to a therapist, talk to someone who could help you. I don't go running to Fox News or don't even come on this podcast.
Don't come on this show. Yeah.
Because actually I'm one of the few people who say maybe we should edit that out because I don't want to see you in jail. If someone does admit something like that on the show, but most people will say we got an exclusive.
We got to run that.
So anyway, with that, we got to get to Ron Moeller. Before we do, Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of this show. We love what they do. If you are looking for ammunition, for home defense, for hunting, for shooting at the range, this is the best stuff on the market. They're a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition. It's designed to tumble upon impact, which is their trademark, tumbles upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design, and it was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. And that's why so many guys in the contracting world, former operators, use this stuff. So guys like Tonto, Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in every state. Go to the dealer locator on fortscottmunitions.com and you're going to find a dealer probably within just a few miles of you. If it's a little bit of a drive, take the drive. It's going to be worth it. And if you're looking for merchandise from them, they do great shirts and everything else. You can go to fortscottmunitions.com, use the promo code Battleline, and you'll get 15% off. Once again, fortscottmunitions.com, FORTSCOTTMUNITIONS. Offer code Battleline for 15% off. One word. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. Joining us for the first time on Battleline Podcast, Ron Moeller, CIA paramilitary operations officer from 2001 to 2012. And as I said during the intro, I mean, your resume is incredible. It's really too much to list. So I'll give you guys some of the highlights. United States Air Force Intel from 76 to 88, Army Civilian Case Officer from 88 to 95, Defense Humant from 95 to 97, and then DIA, CIA, and OMA from 97 to 2001. Combat deployments to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Iraq, the Persian Gulf, the Balkans, and more. And you have two sons who are a Navy corpsman and an Army paratrooper. And it's an absolute honor to have you on.
Yeah.
Thanks, fellas. Actually, my daughter's the corpsman, and she's the oldest sibling. So, oh God, there's going to be hell to pay now.
Yeah, weird.
So, but that's always fun to watch the Army-Navy rivalry going on in the house sometimes. So.
Oh yeah, did Army win this year? Or isn't Army up the last 2 years? Or did Navy?
My son's an E7. He's a platoon sergeant for a scout platoon. He basically says F officers, and he could care less.
He didn't care. Yeah,
he really doesn't care.
I stopped caring every time the army got their asses kicked. So like, oh my goodness. So when people at my Navy buddies hit me up, like, guys, I don't care who's winning, fine. It doesn't matter to me anymore. But it's good. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
No, I with your career, and I know we're going to get into it, but really, I want because we get so many young listeners on this, and people that want to go and serve, and you're from the old. I'm much respect to you. You're from you're in the jawbreaker days. You're back when case officers, in my opinion, were actually case officers. They had to put their time in before they actually became case officers. They weren't case officers right out of college. I want to hear your stories because I always was amazed because our chiefs of bases were the old jawbreaker guy, and they had tremendous stories. And that's what I used to read when I was in high school to come up and the Mujahideen wars and all that. I want to know more about you. And I know a lot of listeners want to know those because those are tremendous stories and how you came up.
Well, an easy thing right off the bat is when our class was 30 people, and after 9/11 the classes were 200.
Yeah.
So it's what is one of those soft truths, you can't mass produce soft. Well, you can't mass produce case officers either.
Yeah.
And we suffered from a lot of one-tour officers who then went out and resigned from the agency, became contractors and making double, triple what they would have made, and or writing books and basically becoming the talking heads on Pick Your Network. So it was hard, and I mean the instructors we had were all from the old Southeast Asia days, and they were tremendous resources, and I still remember a couple of them. One of them, he got up and says, "I'm not going to tell you about my great successes. I'm going to tell you about my failures," and those were much more. From a teaching point of view, from a learning point of view, okay, these are the mistakes he made, and these are timeless mistakes. I mean, they happen all the time. But he also told a few humorous antecedents about he supposedly planted a beacon in a mule train. I call it a mule train. I'm not sure what the animal was, of carrying opium in Burma through to the various drug lords. Except it just wasn't a beacon; it was actually an explosive. So so they blew up the opium train, the animal train. So
that was a mistake or success. That
was the humorous thing. But he talked about tradecraft. Lapses and how recruited assets, or people that they were just merely still assessing, would get arrested or injured, things like that. And that got driven home to me when I was a young Army case officer. I was assigned to an Army unit that was in support of U.S. Army Central Command and by extension Central Command, and we had several Iranian assets. And one of these Iranian assets, he was able to travel to the United States to visit his daughter. So he had a legitimate reason to come to the United States. And that's where we were able to meet with him, debrief him, give him new taskings, give him some specific training for the taskings that we had provided him. Sure. This was mostly dealing with weapons of mass destruction. We always give the security brief before they go, hey, you're going to get stopped when you show up at Tehran Mehrabat Airport, yada, yada. And I guess for whatever reason, he absolutely collapsed. When the customs guy said, "Passport, please," and we also provided them with, because he was traveling to Europe, but when he got to Europe, he was provided with what we called an insert visa. It's not a stamped visa in the passport; it was just a paper insert. Sure. So it protected him. But anyways, he collapsed. Both him and his wife, who were the only family remaining in Iran, got thrown in jail. And about a year or so later, we found out through all sorts of other means that both of them had been killed, executed, shot, or maybe hung. I can't recall. So it was our very sad and awkward duty to go visit the daughter, and give her the death benefit and try to explain without revealing too much. I mean, and she had already known, and she knew about her parents' things. So we, oh God, it was hard. It really drove home the human aspect of human intelligence. There is a cost to be paid, and it really drove home how to, we really need to be super professional, and you kind of get that, that spidey sense that sometimes, maybe we shouldn't take this guy, because he was a little nervous when we were doing some of the training, and even though it was what we thought fairly innocuous, he was so nervous, and maybe we should have just stopped the training and sent him home, but we were under pressure from higher to get stuff done. So yeah, it sucked. It was hard.
Is that something when as you went on, you said you learned from your failures, that if somebody displayed those sorts of traits, the nervousness, the tics, the things that may give them away, that you say, okay, we're not going to use it. We're against using, or at least making the recommendation to hire, whether they listen to you or not. That's another thing. But right. Making the recommendation, hey, we're not going to use this guy. This is why. And we need to find somebody else.
Definitely. I that's where I think it wasn't just role playing anymore. It wasn't, I'm the cool guy on the block, look at me. I'm driving my fancy sports car, I'm pretending I'm all that in a bag of chips. I mean, this was real life, real tragedy. And so when, the boss who, at least the Army guys, they had a lot of street experience and things like that. So they were more amenable, but later on you would, especially when it was Defense Human Service, which is a whole, in the early days, it was a total cluster.
Wow.
But anyway, you would sit there and I was pretty forceful, if I'd still been wearing a uniform, I'm sure I would have had Article 15 collection up and down. So, I mean, I wasn't insubordinate, or maybe a little bit.
Yeah, you got to be. Anybody that's got anything done has always had a little bit of insubordination in them, or done something. I was insubordinate as hell. I hated leadership. I listened to them, but I would always question everything. And that started in basic training. That started with me, where they told us to do a drill, and we're going to do an assault. Let's assault up the hill. And wait a second, the bad guys are up the hill. Well, no, let's flank it. And me and my buddy flanked it, but the drill sergeants, they were smart. So they set up tripwire. So when we flanked, him and I, but right. I remember a drill sergeant looking at us and going, you guys are the reason that we're successful. It's because you're thinking outside the box. Now go do 100 fucking push-ups and I'm going to run you and smoke your bags till you about die. But it made me think that, you know what, that's the kind of things that get things done. When I became in charge, I want somebody to listen to me, but be a little bit insubordinate, do little things outside the box. So whenever they got in the shit, they knew how to think out of their way out of the situation. They weren't thinking, well, what did my leadership tell me here? Let's take about 5 minutes and think about this.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I need to think.
I don't want robots. I want independent thinkers who understand what their end goal is, and all. I could use all the military terminology about, but I need you to be thinking. I mean, I would always encourage that with the junior officers later on, but you're talking about storming uphill. So we're my first tour in Afghanistan right after everything fell, and I showed up early, and I mean it was still relatively I felt like I was like Kabul looked like Stalingrad. It was pretty bad, and but so Anaconda was getting ready to kick off. So the chief of station looked at me and said, hey Ron, you speak Army, so well, and which highlights a small thing about there's a lot of people in the agency outside the paramilitary realm that have zero military experience, have a lot of disdain for the U.S. military, and I'm serious, and have no idea how to communicate, and different services use different language. Things like that. So he brought me along. So we go, we fly up to Bagram, and we're in the TOC, which is in an old Soviet hangar that they still sort of worked. Oh yeah, so we got to. So we're sitting there, and he's of course sitting at the head table with, Major General Hagenbach, division commander, and some spring butt chief of staff colonel, who, can I say that? I mean, is it okay?
Oh yeah. I believe you're fine. No,
I won't go NC-17. I'll just stay at the R level.
No, you're good.
Anything you want, man.
You're fine. You're spot on. No, you're spot on. Keep going.
Even in the initial days of the war zone, they had PowerPoint. God bless the U.S. military. And although it wasn't with the full color dynamics, it was pretty simple color PowerPoint.
You're watching PowerPoints in the damn Russian. I know where that. I know
in the TOC. Yeah, in the TOC. It was still. They'd set up the tent. The field TOC, but of course now it's all built up inside, with all the fancy plywood. Thank you, Seabees, or Red Horse, or somebody. So anyway, so the first slide comes up. It's the decision brief for Exercise Anaconda, and bad Ron. I spring up from the peanut gallery, and I say, "What the." We are not at NTC. This is not a freaking exercise. This is a real world operational mission. And the chief of staff just looks at me like I've just, said, "Hey, sir, you got a big dick growing out of your forehead. What up?"
Well, you kind of did. I mean, you have to, truth, you have to be honest with them.
And Hagenbach just looked at me like, "Who the hell is this?" Because I'm a civilian. I'm dressed like a cool guy. Hi, I'm the RAI model this week. And the chief of station turns around and he goes, "Ron," inside voice. And he turns around, he goes, "Proceed." And it was, oh God, it was a cluster. I mean, I
remember.
Yeah. Why are we landing downhill from the enemy? Why can't we land on top of them or above them? It was all sorts of things. It was.
I remember that my first sergeant and my first captain, which were the command sergeant major 10th Mountain at the time, Grippy. He was my first sergeant, Frank, awesome first sergeant, Frank Grippy, and then which now is General Pete LaCamera. He was my CO at the time. They were the 10th Mountain unit that got the mortars, really saved a complete decimation during Anaconda. Okay. And I just remember reading the report, and I always wondered that. I was like, why in the hell did they land at the worst place and put all their troops? And just lucky 10th Mountain had a tremendous mortar team that did a great job, at least from what I remember and what I read, that their mortar team was just rock stars and were taking fire and still doing hits, or it would have been a complete decimation.
Right. So at the end of the brief, I'm asking some questions just because, my children were not yet in the military, but you look at all these young 18-year-olds and you're going, hey, these people have mothers and fathers, and somebody needs to ask the hard questions, because all the frickin' drones in their ACUs here are not going to ask these questions. And I said, so there's no field artillery? I mean, we don't even have any so we can do some decent barrage or indirect fire.
Yeah.
And no, General Franks has forbidden the deployment of field artillery to Afghanistan.
What was the tell me what was the reason?
They never gave me a reason. They just said, because it was supposed to be, it was an out and back mission. We were going to, we've conquered Afghanistan, or we've liberated, or pick your appropriate phrase. And so, yeah, it was, it was hard, and then, there's all sorts of little anecdotes about Anaconda. The Apache pilots, the Apache air crews, because there's two of them, brave mofos. I mean, these guys, I remember being on the flight line, because I also had a rotary asset that under the agency control that, we'll get into that in a sec. But these Apache guys would come in, and here's this one Apache basically flying back to Bagram, and he's weeble wobbling all over the place because he's taken some serious battle damage. And thank God, thank you, the builders of the Apache, for building a very survivable aircraft. He gets down, and so it's very informal debrief because we're on the old Soviet pierced steel planking ramp. I feel like I'm on China Beach. I'm looking around for Dana Delaney. Like, ooh, come on. He says, "Oh my God, these guys are serious." So we were doing a gun run on the whale.
Yep.
And this guy stepped out of a cave, and he was aiming an RPG at us, and I just stitched him up and down, left and right with the chain gun. He just stood there, absorbed the hits, and that's why my tail rotor is all messed up. He says these are some serious guys, which we were trying to tell the Army guys. That you're not fighting a bunch of all the derogatory terms. These guys have been fighting for 20 plus years, and it's if it's not their fathers, it's the sons. I mean, this is like tradition. I mean,
were you in first with it, Ron? Were you in when it was the Mujahideen Wars? Were you in the Air Force at that time?
I was in the Air Force.
That was going. Yeah, so, I mean, as somebody that should be listened to about how the Moj is going to fight, it should have been you up there doing that PowerPoint presentation, saying, "Guys, this is what you're getting into," or at least they should have briefed you, or the leadership should have said, "Hey."
There was no country awareness. The very, very little of that. I mean, fast forward to 2012, 2013, my final tour there. We're flying in. I'm now a senior advisor to the 3-star general. It's pretty cool. You get a few props. I get a coin or two, and and we're flying into Coast, and I've been to Coast dozens of times, and I have a 1-star general who's the J2 for the ISAF Joint Command there, Paul Nakasone, who's now the commander of NSA and Cyber Command and that sort of thing. Great guy, wonderful. My wife loves him because he always smells so nice. Whatever his aftershave is, Yeah, she embarrassed me one time at a change of command when she came up and gave him a hug. Said, "Oh, you smell so nice." But he's looking, and the hills around Coast. If you've never ever been there, and I never want to really go back, is that they're smooth as a baby's behind, with maybe an occasional tree growing up. And I look at that, and Paul and his staffers, his J2 Intel staffers, are kind of looking. They're kind of doing the dog drool look. Not Paul so much, but the staffers, and they're just kind of like, "Oh gosh, gee." I go, 100 plus years ago, when the British first, did their first of 3 invasions of Afghanistan from British India, aka now Pakistan part, these hills were severely wooded. In fact, if you look at some old woodcuts, paintings of British battles, skirmishes during that war, you'll see them advancing uphill with their Lee Enfields or whatever, going through very severe, if we were in Southeast Asia, we would call triple canopy jungle type thing with scrub oak and tall trees and all sorts of natural obstacles. And he goes, "Oh, I didn't know that." I go, wait, we've been here for almost 13 years now, and we're still sending people out that have minimal area knowledge or background on the conflict. And I mean, I could go on and on about that. I mean, the C-Sticka guys, the training guys, every year a different Army element would show up. I remember one year it was the Oregon National Guard, and with their fancy little patches and stuff like that. And I literally heard the colonel say, "The last unit didn't train these guys right, so we're gonna start over again and train them again." And this went on, throughout every deployment. I would hear similar things all the time, and so now you start reading the news. Gosh, we're withdrawing, and we're really worried. After 20 years, will the Afghan National Army be able to hold its own? I go, I don't think the Afghan National Army knows because they've been the most overtrained or undertrained or mistrained. I mean, I think, and what really drove it home for me was when one of the commanders of C-Sticka said, "We're getting rid of all the AK-47s. We're going to issue M4s." And I go, "So you're going to issue them a more complicated rifle that requires more TLC to a bunch of guys who have grown up around, I mean, they were weaned with AK-47s in the crib type of thing. And you're going to take that all away from them and give them an unfamiliar weapon, and you're going to dress them up in OCPs and Kevlar helmets, and they're all going to look like they come right out of a Ranger Joe's catalog, but it's but they still can't tie their boots, and it blows my mind.
They just they don't learn from the past, and it's all out there. I remember before I went to Kabul, my first trip, I read The Bear Trap because I wanted to at least get some history. I wanted to know more. But I knew the Muj, but I still was a youngster, and it gave me some insight of really what we were fighting over there, and how the country is. And Coast, you're right. Coast is, when I first heard that it was, I was like, holy shit, no way. Mm-hmm. How did this thing? And now I have a question for you on that one, though. I never got an answer of, was it the British or was it the Russians coming in and poisoning everything? And
the Russians.
That's what did. And that's what they did.
It was also funny. I remember my very first day in Kabul. We land at Kabul airport, and I get off and I grab my ruck and my bag and my weapon, and I look like hey, is this where the war is at? And and I hop into a Toyota Tacoma, 4-door, and we drive. We're driving the direct route from the airport to where the station is, and where that's at. So
yeah.
Sorry.
Yep. Is that it? Do you got a Talibar shirt on? Is that a I can't see it. Like, there, he's rocking the Talibar shirt. I can't see underneath it.
Oh yeah, it's just like a Harley Davidson.
It's if you've ever been at the hotel there, we call it the guy. What did you? Okay, you were there way before I was. So did you tell me you named it? Tell me you named it.
Didn't name it. It was already named when I got there, and the plywood walls and
Hey, my signature's up there too. It still
got so full they had to put plywood over the plywood.
Plywood. Yeah. I last time I served there, I started going to Kandahar and then Coast as well, and then Herat in 2007, and then I started going to Libya and Yemen, that Talibar. I've got my shirt too. It's boxed up. I've got it, and now Talibar guys, that was a bar we had, of course. Talibar,
right?
Okay, keep going. This is awesome.
I mean, since I live near Sturgis, I wear this, and I'm doing props, but I'm still like being hey, wait, that's not really a Harley shirt.
That's not really a Harley shirt.
No, it's because I ride a Victory, but never mind. No, I don't. I don't ride a motorcycle at all. But anyways, so we're driving in the Tacoma, and we're going through the 2 traffic circles on our way to the hotel, and there's a donkey or mule, not donkey drawn cart with some old weazened guy who's probably all of 36, but in Afghanistan you can never really tell because they age at an exponential rate. And he's got the cart is just loaded with the gnarliest looking wood I've ever seen. I mean, I've traveled on the Oregon coast and seen the myrtlewood trees and that are shaped by the ocean winds and breezes, and I go, wow. And the guy driving, who'd been there a little bit longer, he says, yeah, they're digging up the roots of the dead trees and that's what that is, because, and I go, oh, that makes sense, because it would, the way roots, are big and then they taper off and they don't follow any sort of direct path. And I go, wow. And the donkey, but I still remember the donkey's kind of doing that little head shake thing going, please just shoot me, put me out of my misery.
I remember seeing that with the donkeys as well. And the trees, utilizing those trees when they would utilize them for scaffolding. when they're building, building them, and it was just those. And I didn't know they were roots. That makes perfect sense. No, I thought they were just where are they getting those little small trees, and they're
my scoutmaster would have had a conniption fit. That's not a safe lashing.
That's not a so. On with that, being there in Afghanistan, the time you were, and then to the time. And what is your opinion? I mean, you're giving it for the most, but going until you left in 2012. I thought we were doing great things there for a while, and then I saw a change. I was with GRS at the time. I was with GB.
Right. No, I remember.
We do the cake. I got to see the cake, and I remember when I first got there, we had the old, and that's at an endearment term, a term of endearment. We had the old salty case officers that were ex-Army, ex-Air Force, and then all of a sudden, like in 2008, they get younger and younger, no experience, or they're just out of college and they got to the farm, and and God bless their enthusiasm. They were very enthusiastic, but it just seemed like we weren't really running assets anymore. It was I don't know what they were doing. It just turned it.
Yeah, no, it's God, it's it was pretty bad. They didn't really have a. I mean, they had a lot of enthusiasm, but they were sort of like a rocket that getting fired off with, and the fins were sort of cattywampus, and they were all over the place. And I know the GRS guys, bless you, you guys, the patience of Job. I mean, to take these guys out and to do stuff, and you go. I remember one discussion up in the pit, the pool up there, and they're kind of doing the pre-movement brief, and the head of the movement team, great guy. He was former Marine, always carried his K-bar. I'm going, yeah, Jim Bowie would be proud, but. He said, okay, we're gonna take route Smokestack, and we're gonna do this. And you remember Smokestack, and we're gonna do this. And no, I think we're gonna do this. I'm going, dude, let them take care of you. Just worry about getting to the restaurant or wherever the meeting was, and accomplish your thing, and then let them safely return you back to here, so you can pound away on the keyboard and type up your reports. But don't argue with these guys. Well, what it was? I really want to go past Chicken Street because I want to buy some rugs.
I forgot. That's what we got so many times. I got to get some rugs. Wait a second. There's a great tea shop there. You buy some tea. Oh, they have the best croissant. That's what we always laughed at the end line in the movie The Avengers when Tony Stark says, "Hey, I passed this place about shawarma. I don't know what it is, but I want to try." And I just start laughing because it's more Arabic than Afghan, but it's still hilarious. I remember my wife didn't get it when I saw that, and I laughed because that's what I thought too. It was like shawarma. Have you ever tried shawarma? I could just hear one of the case officers resonating in the back of my head. Hey, you know any good shawarma or good rugs? Rugs was the big thing. Got to go get some rugs. We got to do a rug trip today. Like, are you shitting me? We're going to buy. That's what you need me to try.
Endanger all of our lives by going out there and doing that, and getting rugs that we have to smuggle. And they're not even getting them back legally. Exactly. Did I say smuggle? I'm sorry. Maybe we should cut that out. But it amazed me. The floor is covered with contraband.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no clue what I. It just because as GRS, and I'll tell you from our standpoint, we could see a difference from the one guy. I remember one of the toughest guys. If he's still working, I won't say his call sign, but case officer, former Army guy. And I remember, and I feel bad for him. He had to shit so bad. He had the runs. Still went out, did his op. Of course, I took the most bumpy road going out to actually NDS. So I'm taking the most bumpy, but that kind of guy. And I remember looking at him because he's just when we got back, after he about cussed me out because like, dude, you almost caused me to shit my pants 3 times. Like, man, I'm sorry. There are no smooth roads in Kabul. I tried to find the smoothest road, but he's like, you could just tell it was his life from the day he got there 2 years earlier, and he kept coming back to then when he was his last trip. He was just. The life had gone, the energy had gone, and he's like, I can't. And he was the last of the older case officer generations that I remember. And I don't know if I think he may have even retired. He was thinking about going to do another job. And you could see even our movements and our everything just kind of stopped as far as getting good intel or doing whatever we need to do. And so I just always wanted to get, because I was thinking, well, maybe it's just me seeing it. Maybe I was just becoming a bigger asshole. So but
the thing was, again, in the early days, we could take a lot of educated risks.
Yeah.
And I remember the agency fixed wing aircraft flying in from Tashkent, and because of Air Force idiocy, they had to stay on the ground for 2-3 hours before they could return to Tashkent. So I have all these people that this is kind of like the circuit rider around the Pikistan.
Yeah.
And I knew the air crew guys and stuff like that, because I'm an air branch dude. So, but there's a couple people, and there was one lady who is still working there, and she's like, but she's bright. I mean, but her eyes are like, wow, I've only seen this from space, from pictures from space. And because just outside our crappy little ramp, which, obviously got really developed into, O'Hare Terminal, whatever.
Yeah, it did.
But, there was this just pile for as far as you could see, because it was piled so high, of silver Russian aircraft, just, all, and we tried to find, altimeters and stuff like that, but I really didn't want to get blown up. So, whatever, but it was, so we, me and my partner from an Army special unit, we hopped in our vehicle, we said, hey, this is what we're going to do. I mean, she had a Kevlar vest on, no weapon, but that's okay. Yeah. And we gave her a quick windshield, 30, 45 minute windshield tour of Kabul. And
that's cool.
It was really
awesome.
cool.
It's awesome.
And because my career and her career intersected several times, and that she always remembered that, and that was, it's sometimes it's not what you know, but it's who you know. It's helpful. And so we gave her a windshield tour, and it was also educational for all of us too. I mean, we took her past the soccer stadium where the executions had happened. Yeah. We took her along the roaring, raging Kabul River. I'm being sarcastic.
Was there any water in it? Was it still just? Was there just sometimes there's some? There's just.
It was a trickle of open sewer, and there was the lady, this old, crippled beggar lady in her burqa sitting there, and she was. I go, I need to recruit her as our spotter assessor for safety type of thing, because this was one of those GRS routes too. We didn't stop anywhere for shopping for her or anything like that. We didn't, we again educated risk, but we did that. Came back, and she was really appreciative and stuff like that, and she took off. And so I also remember, we were talking about new case officers and their enthusiasm and stuff like that. And I mean, some were really good. I remember Helga Boss coming off the aircraft from Tashkent, and so I give them a little welcome brief, because they're literally not going to go to the hotel. Yeah. They're going to get on a helicopter and did him out to where they need to go. So I give them all a quick thing, and the ones that need to go to the hotel, the transportation shows up, and the GRS guys take them and stuff like that. And Helga, he's asking good questions. I didn't know anything about him, and I go, nice guy. He's asking good questions. He seems really bright. He's observing. His eyes are always moving and stuff like that. So I'm going, this is a good guy. What was 2-3 weeks later, I had to go pick up his body.
Shit.
He was killed in that training accident.
Oh, no shit. I remember that. I didn't know him. I didn't know.
Great guy. I mean, what it was they were utilizing weapons. In this case, it was hand grenades from old Mujahideen Soviet caches that were here, there, everywhere, and unfortunately, a lot of these things were unstable. So and it was tragic, and it was it's the military is real good at casualties and taking them to Dover and stuff like that. The agency, not so well. It's it's like we're not equipped to do that. So again, I speak Army, I speak Air Force, and we were able to make it happen and get him back. I mean, we learned that lesson when I was still back at headquarters working at Air Branch, and the air operations officer at Karshi Khanabad, the old K2, was trying to figure out how to transport Mike Spann's body back. And the doors, we couldn't turn the container, remains container. It was. I learned a whole lot of new swear words from people up and down the food chain about that. Well, can't you make this happen? I says, you give me a C-17, I can make anything happen. Yeah, it's like,
Hey, Ron, this makes me wonder, and this goes back to something that Chris said, that Chris asked, but I'd like to go a little bit more in depth with it. Just from my own civilian perspective, who tries to listen to you guys and learn from you. I mean, what really should have been done in Afghanistan? Because we're at a point right now where in the next few months, we're saying we're doing a complete pullout. I'm 34 years old. I'm about to be 35. The first election I ever voted in was 2004. And, you had John Kerry saying we need to pull out now. And then 2008, it was, Ron Paul saying we need to pull out now. In 2012, that this was and now we're in 2021. Should we have pulled out long ago? Did we accomplish the objective? I mean, did this just become another mission about nation building more so than killing terrorists?
Killing terrorists.
My wife says when I get asked these questions, I tend to start stepping up on my podium and doing a master's level, class on this stuff. I mean, first off, I would turn the question back on you, Ian, and say, so what was our objective? Please.
Yeah, that's the question a lot of people don't know, because I think the original objective was to kill the terrorists behind 9/11, but we also found out Bin Laden was stationed in Pakistan.
Right.
A lot of the people behind 9/11 were in Saudi Arabia, who are considered our allies, and it does make me wonder, why are we still there? Especially because our tax dollars should be used, I think most people would agree, to fund our country as opposed to nation building in another country that has no impact on most of us when we have plenty of issues over here.
I remember pallets of money. That was one of our jobs, pallets, taking it to Amarillo over there in India.
How much does $1 million weigh? Do you remember?
I should know. I know how much.
7 pounds. I had to hump 7 million up the hill to engineer whatever his name was one time. Because he was the commander of the big ass militia. He claimed he had 500 fighters. I go, if I see 50, I'm lucky. I mean,
that might be one of the benefits of Bitcoin. Now you can just wire them some Bitcoin.
Yeah, how much was it? Because I was lucky. See, our job was, and every once in a while we'd have to hump, but that was you guys. I got to throw it in the back of my car, back of my Land Cruiser or truck. I didn't have to hump it anywhere.
Well,
how much did it weigh?
27 pounds per $1 million.
27 pounds.
The shrink wrap thing, and of course, we get back to station. And the chief of ops goes, well, did you do it? And I go, you bet, chief, all $6 million. And his eyes got big, and I says, well, there was a handling fee. I mean, I had to pay the air crew, I had to pay fuel, ramp fees, and there's my cut. I mean, I'm just trying to have fun, and he's about to, totally lose his shit on me.
They have no cops ever had any sense of humor that they're aware of ever.
Dude, relax. It all got there. Here's the receipt, and we didn't have GoPros, so it's not like I could document the transfer or anything like that.
It's hilarious. It's like, we're not the mafia. We're not just, if you either cut them or pay them, but keep the receipts. That's what it always is.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious. Well, just make your mark, and then I'll say, yeah, this was so and so's. And I mean, we laugh about that and we say it, but what it also tells us is there's a huge trust factor that that the people back at station or at base, give the officers that go out and do that, because there is some temptation to commit things and do bad things with money and defraud the U.S. government.
There is little oversight. Shrink wrap. The biggest deterrent you had from taking money was just getting your Leatherman out and cutting it into the shrink wrap and taking a few hundred, and then the amount of opium that was over there too. And I can go on with.
I remember we were flying over Helmand Province in 2006. I was the base chief at Bagram, and so I basically the agency conduit to 10th Mountain Division, a different commander and much better division at this time, and this was. The Marines hadn't showed up yet. The Brits were still doing RC South or that part of RC South.
Yep.
And anyways, we're flying a CODEL congressional delegation over, and we're flying over poppy field, and they're all in bloom. And this congresswoman who is no longer in Congress, thank you. She goes,
"You can't say who."
No, she says on the headset, "Wow, look at all the pretty flowers." And I go, she thinks they're like tulips, like we're flying over Holland or something. Like I go, "Ma'am, those are poppies." "Well, poppies are nice." I go, "No, they're opium. That's opium."
Oh my God, you gotta say her name. I swear.
No, I won't. That's son of a
bitch. I swear.
But it was, but what was surprising that her staffers were like, "Huh?" Too.
They're about as bright. So my opinion, and I cut into Ian's question. I'm sorry about that, Ron.
No, sorry.
It was both of our question though, and it's a big question because week after week we get into this. I feel like because there are those people who say we need to have a presence there forever. And a lot of the guys who have been there do not feel that.
I'm the same way. We go over there. Somebody hurts us. We go over there. We kill them. We destroy them. We get out.
Right. Exactly. I mean,
let's go kick the shit out of them, and then let's get out of there. Say, don't do it again.
Yeah, like the initial Ranger raid in just outside of Kandahar there. I mean,
at Kandahar,
things like that. But there are various points in that 20 years, Ian, where that was a good point where, okay, it's time to, break contact and move offshore. But for whatever reason, the bright idea fairies in Washington, D.C., the policymakers who, they have I got the cool Columbia U or Yale pedigree on my wall, and therefore, I know all. And the change of administrations, the change in the Pentagon hierarchy, the change in State Department, literally, I think we should have, what we did initially, we that was all good. I mean, the fall of Kabul in December of 2001 it hit a lot of people by surprise how quickly the Taliban collapsed. I mean, the manager of the hotel where we stayed, there, he said, "Yeah, it was really funny because in the morning I fed the Taliban breakfast, but in the evening I fed you guys dinner." So
he was still there. He's still. And then the coolest thing, Ian, I tell you this, it was a real hotel where it was a pass. We kept the same staff there. So the two old guys that were serving, they were my Momo and Coco. They adopted me as their uncle. Momo means he's the uncle on my mother's side. Coco means he's the uncle on my dad's side. But they would still always come to work dressed in their vest, dressed in a tuxedo without the tuxedo jackets.
Right.
Still, when we were there, we would come back dirty as shit. And they have it cleaned up. They were the nicest guys, and they would still serve us in their tux uniforms.
Well, they were getting paid a healthy amount. Of course, they were.
Oh, they were extremely, and they were happy that I love those. That's one of my fond memories from the hotel. There's those two guys, and I went to Kabul so many times that they finally just adopted me, and I started to learn Dari and Farsi so I could talk to. I know, crazy, dangerous.
One more trip and you get citizenship.
I know. That's what it was. It's like I need to go stand outside of that line to the Iranian embassy because all the Iranian embassy had to get my passport to go stamp. So I go to Iran, but. No, I agree.
There were so many, and maybe stay for a year, Ian, to train up because there was always been some Afghan army in existence, whether it was under the old, Afghan communist regime, during the Civil War, splintered apart. But there was always that cadre of, Afghan, at least officers, and just give them a quick training. I mean, we weren't. Well, I'd hoped we weren't going to change them into a Jeffersonian democracy or something like that. But yeah, there was so many points in there where we coulda, woulda, shoulda just pulled pitch and gotten out of there, and just monitored from afar. God, I mean, Holbrooke, when he was the special representative for Pakistan, he would hold these weekly shuras up at State Department, okay. And when I was the DCIA's representative to the chairman's Pak-Afghan cell, a little 50-person cell, which was really very well conceived and staffed by some real high-speed, low-drag officers from across the Joint Spectrum, most of whom had Afghan or Pakistan experience, and from combat arms, special operations, aviation, that sort of thing, logistics, whatever. A lot of those people are now in their respective services. They have stars, so for better for worse. But we would go to these shuras, and we would sit there and the senior DOD guy, the deputy chief of this 50-man cell, was a Navy SEAL captain, and he would kind of give this week in the war overview, very general, but always trying to be positive and upbeat and that sort of thing. And I still remember this one senior foreign officer lady, who whatever, and she says, "Well, what are you guys doing about women's rights?" I'm looking around like, that's not in our wheelhouse. That's not what we're about. You go get AID, go get, the UN Women's, voting initiative, whatever. But we read about that now, Ian, that, God, when we leave, women's rights are going to go away. Well, I'm sorry, the Afghans have had 20 years to get their shit together, and both militarily wise, logistics wise, government corruption wise, political system wise, and they just, the Americans will take care of that. That's okay. We're no big deal, especially the logistics and the corruption stuff. I mean, I compared and contrast Kabul in early 2002 when I first arrived to those early months of 2013 before I left. I mean, it was night and day difference. It was like I went from Stalingrad in 2002 to the Vegas Strip in 13. I mean, there was the Army's version of GRS. Their PSD guys. They had different, right? They had different route, personal security detachments for all you informed listeners out there, and and we would go past what they called Vegas, and it was maybe a mile long, maybe a kilometer long, but of garishly lit. I mean, ugliest purple lights, but I mean, bright as crap. Wedding chapels. I mean, I thought it's casinos, but no, they're wedding chapels, and we called that route Vegas, and it was hilarious. And the other thing I noticed was that during daytime travel through Kabul, going to the embassy or to ISAF headquarters or wherever we needed to go, the amount of vehicles, and if you're going to steal a car in Europe, at least have the decency to take off the EU plate from wherever. I never saw so many Porsches and Mercedes, and of course, none of them had Afghan plates, like there was any Afghan DMV out there, anyways, and. Oh my! I remember one time we were we're driving our little convoy, and this Porsche Panamera driven by some westernized Afghan lady. I mean, you thought we were in the Le Mans Destruction Derby. She's zipping in and out of our formation, and we're and the driver and the the TC are trying to tighten up the thing, but we're having to weave through traffic, and it's I'm not watching the drive. I'm watching my sector here, and I'm like, I promised Mom every time my wife, every time I left, I'm coming back walking off the airplane. I'm not going to do anything stupid. We won't tell.
Yeah, it's that part of it. But really, for all the listeners out there and all the women's right, hey, that should be right there I would say barometer, a measurement of women's rights, where you just can say there's a woman driving in Kabul from when we first got there to after. Yes, right. It has improved. When we leave, we'll go, well, yeah, it probably will.
Probably.
That's the Taliban.
In 1213, when I was working for ISAF as a senior advisor, the ISAF Joint Command, I got to go meet a lot of Afghans and expats and other sorts of people and a lot of media types. But it was interesting meeting a lot of the young Afghan generation that had come of age after 2001. So they had lived, for the most part, considering the history prior to that, in relative peace and security. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people will disagree, but I'm going, well, I can go to the south side of Chicago and I can beg to differ with you, type of thing. Yeah. But but I would ask them. I said, why aren't you guys being more politically active, more forceful in? I mean, what the problems are. You guys are carrying around at least 2 cell phones. I mean, you guys are like way wired and connected. Why aren't you sitting there holding Karzai or Gayani or whomever accountable and getting involved and making the change from within and whatever other platitude I could come up with, but. Well, you don't understand Afghan culture. We have to wait our turn. I go, you guys you're gonna lose your country if you don't get off the stick. And then the other thing, Ian, was always funny. I remember going to a meeting with the senior military leadership of the Afghan National Army Ministry of Defense, and God. Was it General Wardak? I can't remember. Anyways, he always liked to wear his Ranger tab and his American jump wings and everything like that.
That was Wardak. I'm pretty sure that was Wardak.
Yeah. And he and we were talking about future training, and things like that. And it was like, oh my God, shoot me now, because this was boring as crap. Because didn't we just do this 6 months ago? But he says, generals, we have a list of material we need. And he goes, well, what do you need? More rifles, more this, more that. He says, no, we want a wing of F-16 fighters, and we want your surplus M60 tanks, or if you can, we'll take the M1s. And that's oh my God, and I'm like, oh, and everybody's like, well, we'll take that under study and advisement. Yeah. And the general leans back and go, you know what they want to do? He says, what? I says, they want to go eliminate the threat across the border.
Yeah.
Because they're tired of putzing around. They're tired of playing defense with one arm tied behind them. Because of the sanctuaries in Pakistan, the Taliban or the Haqqani or pick your poison could come across at a time and place of their choosing, do what they wanted to do, and then either fade into the countryside or retreat to rearm, retrain, recruit more people, and things like. And God, we couldn't even exchange artillery fire across. Although the KPF did have lots of 120 millimeter mortar duels with the Haqqanis. Yes,
but you're right. We couldn't do shit to Pakistan as soon as they crossed there, and that's all they had to do to get there. Well, that's how Bin Laden escaped, even though we should have used the Ranger Battalion to block the way instead of letting the ANA at that time block that. That's a whole nother. I wanted to ask you on that because I know you were there, and I remember. Now I was a contractor time. I wasn't a regiment at that time, but I remember that my other buddies that were still with the regiment, that they were the initial team that was supposed to block all those routes out, and for some reason, whether it was the COS or whether it was the Pentagon or somebody said, no, we'll let the ANA handle it, even though we didn't really have a rapport with the ANA yet, if we even want to call it the ANA.
We're talking Tora Bora, or we're talking Anaconda?
It was Tora Bora.
Tora Bora. Bernstein, you read his book. He wanted the Ranger Regiment or
yep,
sort of
yep.
light infantry. Although my son in the 82nd would laugh at his description of light infantry. Hey, Dad, my ruck only weighed 125 today. Woo-hoo. And because I didn't have to carry extra batteries. The poor kid's going to be in the VA forever now. He's with back problems.
And we all shrink a couple inches when we get. It's part of the game.
He actually has. I joke with him now. I says, "Hey, you look like you did in grade school with your pant legs rolled up." Type. Yeah. Then I get the crap beat out of me. But yeah, Bernstein wanted the Ranger Regiment and to be the blocking force. But Franks and Rumsfeld, no, small footprint. We're gonna and the Afghans were cutting deals and like, hey, oh, look, Elvis, and they would scurry that away. And sort of the same thing happened during Anaconda, because we'd identified, okay, here's the whale, the Shicot, and their little bastion fortress that the Mooj had built way back when, and things like that. But we'd identified all the rat lines or smugglers routes or whatever you want to call them, out to Pakistan and out of that area. And the idea was we're gonna place soft teams up there, little SR, strategic reconnaissance teams, sniper teams, that sort of thing. And of course we had British SOF, we had Norwegian SOF, we had the one I remember the most is the Danish SOF. I mean, these guys were they were running and trying to get altitude acclimation, because the mean altitude of Denmark is like -4. I mean, it's like it's a pretty low level country. So they get infilled up there by 47s, and 2 days later we get this emergency evac call, and the 47s are all like, well, we've got our schedule, and they haven't filled out the proper air request movement order.
Now, this wasn't task force. This was a Brown. Are these just normal Army, or they belong to 10th Mountain, or what?
I think some of them were task force guys, but they were task force guys, but they were a very high demand, low density type of product. But neither them or neither the MH-47s or the CH-47s had the oomph, and they were being controlled like we were still in some sort of peacetime evolution,
Wow.
And so the soft guys, and the way the talk was task organized was a total. I mean, I could write a master's degree paper on organizational arrangement. Oh my God, stupid as whatever. And they come running around. I go, hey guys, what do you need? I got a helicopter with high altitude engines that can carry X number of pounds, weight your European kilos, whatever it was. And what do you need? We need this. I says, all right, let me get my chief pilot in here. And chief pilot goes, yeah, tell your guys we'll be there this time. And here's the type thing, give us whatever you can about the LZ, the HLZ landing spot, whatever. And we got those guys down. And the next day I'm sitting there in the, trying to, juggle lots of balls and plates and keep the Army from being stupid. And Air Force General Trebone, I remember this because he had the most perfect hair. Oh my God, it was so perfect. And his Air Force fatigue uniform was so immaculate. He'd gone to the Bagram dry cleaners. I don't know, I'm joking. But he comes up to me and he says, are you the agency air officer? I says, yeah, I am. I knew who he was, but I'm not going to jump up and go to the position of attention or even parade rest. I'm just sitting there going dude, what?
What do you want? What do you want, man?
What can I do you for? If I miss my spit cup and get it on your boots, oops. Just call it a combat loss. But he says, yeah, you guys need to stop interfering with military movements. Exactly, Chris. And I go, what? He says, we have a process and a procedure on how we do things. I said, if you're talking about last night's emergency, movement, of that team, yeah. And if you got a problem with it, my chief of station told me, you've got carte blanche within the left or right limits of legality and ethicals and, common sense, to support to support the military effort on Anaconda. Okay, boss, that's pretty good guidance. I can do that. And I basically told people, because I would have other people come up, other soft teams come up, because they were trying to hopscotch on the rat lines as they started. Hey, we're not in the right spot. We need to move to this one because we've seen indications of, the ants are scurrying that away. And, they would go, they'd be sitting there going, God, we got to fill out all these forms and, got to put in a request and it's got to be adjudicated and discussed. And, the air tasking orders got to, says, what do you need, guys? Here's my chief pilot. Let's sit down. Let's pull out some piece of paper. Give me. I'll do a quick map. Yeah. Okay. Great. How many guys? Well, okay. We might need to do 2 lifts or what? I mean, and they're like, that's it. I go, yeah. I mean, this is war. I'm trying to do the right thing. I mean, hey, if you don't want us to do it, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean,
hey, I know Chris has to get going, and we definitely have to do a part 2 at some point. And I feel like I've been saying that just about every interview.
I did it because I remember how busy you guys were. By the time that started to roll, Air Branch, you guys were running to death. Literally, you guys it was so busy. But that's the initiative. That's what wins wars. That's what thinking outside the box, not politics before your guys. Hey, bureaucratic bullshit. Because by that time you've lost the initiative, or whoever you're going after has already left. It's like watching a fish swim, and we're just going to make a whole bunch of fucking noise back here for about an hour until they swim away, and they're like, okay, now we've got our fishing pole. Let's go and throw the line in and see if we can catch it. So now, we do need to get into that more because I did that. Yep.
We definitely will. The last thing, and I'm probably stealing Chris's thunder here on this last one, but we always do like to incorporate the elements of faith and inspiration in this show. And for you, I mean, you're a guy who has had a crazy amount of combat deployments, who has been in the military since the mid 70s up until relatively recently. I'm sure there's been a combat deployment where faith or some type of positivity had to get you through it. Do you have any stories like that before we wrap things up?
Maybe where something you thought you weren't going to come home. And it doesn't have to be a firefight. A lot of people think that's all the time where you think, man, I'm not going to make it through it.
Well, yeah, I mean, gosh, never been asked that question before. I mean, there's a couple that stand out. The January 07, early January 07, into the Korengal Mountain outposts up there.
Yep.
I mean, it was my first real firefight type of thing. Instead of being from up above and observing, the thing, mortars. My mortar exchange from the distance at altitude is really pretty. It's like fireworks on the ground, but but probably not so nice there. But I remember landing when the Black Hawk landed in the Korengal. We were doing battlefield circulation and things like that, and the landing of the Black Hawk was the signal for the enemy to initiate the attack on the Korengal. And I mean, all of a sudden, it's just like, wow. And I'm pushing people off the bird, and I'm not an infantry guy. I'm not a ranger. I'm not a SEAL. I'm not some Huya PJ or anything like that. But I think common sense, instinct, and listening to guys like you, Chris, just sitting around the Talabar or wherever, just, I pick up a lot of, like, hey, that's a good tip. I'm going to keep that in mind just in case. And I'm pushing people because everybody else is just sort of sitting there frozen.
You got to move. I said, you got to move. Get the fuck out.
I can already feel the pilot. He's like pulling up power and things. I go, yeah, no, because that's the most vulnerable time of a helicopter is that, he's trying to crab into altitude and things like that. And you can hear the rounds impacting in the tail boom and wherever. So it was, it was like, and, after everything, and we finally got back late that day back to Bagram after many, false starts.
Sure.
I'm sitting there thinking to myself, because I have to write a report to the chief of station, say, hey, don't do, this is what I did, and yes, I'm back, and thank you for letting me do this. And oh, by the way, the Army's awarding me a medal, and I'm getting a combat action badge. Which, hey, I mean, I know for an infantry guy, yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's that certificate right there.
Yeah,
so, the orders and everything. It's legit. It's not just a bunch of guys. Hey. I mean, Chris Haas, the commander of 3rd Group, he said, if we could authorize it, we'd give you a CIB. And
that's what I was going to say. It may not be a CIB, but that's okay.
I'm a civilian. I didn't expect anything.
I didn't know that. That's still tremendous. You did awesome. But
to answer your question, Ian, with all that preamble is, I'm sitting there going, I'm like mid 40s. I'm going, this shit's really a young man's game, and oh God, I'm thanking myself that I didn't like lose my shit, like I didn't pee in myself, and I didn't, because you always wonder how you're going to react in that sort of a situation, and I thanked God that I'd listened to people like Chris and other veterans like that had a lot more experience in this stuff, and when they would tell it, you could see sometimes that 1,000-meter stare in their eyes because they were remembering, and some of those remembrances weren't that good. I mean, I had similar things in other aspects, but just those combat tidbits. So I felt like, the big platoon sergeant was looking out for me, type of thing, and I did awesome. The right thing. So yeah.
No, you did. I mean, for any guys, the Coringo Valley, for anyone who don't know, that's I can't always say Restrepo. That's it. So if you guys want to know what Ron went through, read books on the Coringo Valley or watch Restrepo. It was unbelievably intense.
There's a new book out on the whole Korengal and that whole area called The Hardest Place by Wesley Morgan, and give him a little plug because I get interviewed in the book too. But it's basically a microcosm of our whole Afghan conflict in just that one place, and it's eye-opening.
Well, we definitely need to get you around too, because I also wanted to talk to you about Masood and how that fuck up, how we lost, how we let that happen when honestly we could have, the Afghan war, if we would have just protected him a little bit better, he could have ended it for us. But I'll save that for the next one.
No, we will. It's been an absolute honor having you on, sir. And just the fact that for the audience, Ron contacted me very early when we started the show and said, "Hey, I'd love to come on." And I was really hoping Ron didn't think I was blowing him off. Ron was on my list of we have to get this guy on. And I'm glad, it's 82 episodes in, so it's a little late, but I'm glad that we finally did it.
That's why I gave James Powell a hard time for getting ahead of me again.
He's a personal friend of mine. He's a great guy. And I always feel funny calling him that name because, as we know, it's not his real name. But anyway, you guys could follow. I think that the only way to follow you is at OGA Ron at OGA_Ron on Twitter. I mean, you don't have a book out. That's it, right?
I keep dabbling at trying to write a book, but I like butterfly. So it's it's a little hard.
You could follow Ron Moeller on Twitter once again. So it's at OGA_Ron. This has been a tremendous episode. We will definitely do a part 2. I feel like I've been saying it with a lot of guys recently, but we've had a lot of great people on. So the last thing I'll say, we have our mugs available, which Tonto's been using, our Battleline Podcast mugs. Yeah. The link is in the description. Still shirts available at tonto-apparel.myshopify.com. They came out great. So if you're a new listener, subscribe, follow us on all social media at Battleline Podcast on Instagram, at Battleline Pod on Twitter and everywhere else. And support our great sponsors, because that's who keeps us doing what we do. And an absolute honor having you on. And thank
Ron,
you for all these years of what you've done for this country.
Yeah, brother.
My privilege, my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
You're a rock star, man. You're awesome.
I'm just a humble guy who did a job.
You did a good job. I mean, and that's it within the circles. So hey, man, I appreciate it. Now, I can't wait to get you back on and ask you some more of that, because there's stories like, damn it, if this could have been over, just if we would have, what the fuck went wrong?
What would we have named Masood?
Exactly.
I mean, oh my God.
Exactly. You're right. All right, brother. I got to run, guys.
That's all for this episode of the Battleline Podcast, but we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. To sign up for future Battleline tactical courses, go to www.christantoperanto.net. Believe in yourself, face all challenges head on, and as always, never quit.